Rolling Tin Fist.
Hello, man. It's 2 in the morning, and I just spent the last hour and a half attempting a dual boot install of Ubuntu Linux and Windows 8 on a old school ThinkPad I got for a very good price. And for those of you who aren't into tech, so on a machine on a computer without any operating system like Windows or OS X for Mac or Ubuntu for Linux, you can install whatever flavor of operating system you want. Now, in some cases, depending on your needs, you can do what's called a dual boot, meaning you have two operating systems that you can boot up into on the machine. So the way it typically works is that you have installed on the machine two operating systems. In my case, Windows 8 and Ubuntu Linux. And so the way it should work is when you do this successfully and you then boot up the machine, a menu should come up giving you what options in terms of operating systems to load for a specific period of time. So the menu will typically look like, Ubuntu Linux will be the first item, there may be a DOS item, and then there may be a Windows item, and you can just pick one. So if you pick the first one, in this case Ubuntu, it will load that up, and you'll go into that operating system. If you pick Windows, it'll go into that operating system. So I've done this before, but a long time ago. So I had to pull up my old notes and try to get it done because I am doing some development that will require me to have both systems. There are other ways to do it, but that's stuff that you can find other places on the internet. So why is this important? One of the things I learned from my time away, I just got back last week. I was gone for about 3 weeks. And I saw a lot of places. I traveled south, east, and then back home. And one of the things I love of these trips is that even if I go with the family, which is not a lot, but I try to do one family trip a year, it's an opportunity to clear my head and kind of reflect on the time that has passed since such a last trip. So this trip, like all my other trips since I took the Red Pill, January of 2015, I really tried to share the good news of Red Pill and MGTOW to as many men as I can, even though I myself am not MGTOW, I'm awake and well married. However, I've gotten so much value from MGTOW and Red Pill knowledge that it's just something that I feel, like almost like free money to pass it along because I got so much out of it. Why not pass it on? And, being a married guy, that's really a lot of times ground zero for those really needing in dire need of red pill knowledge because they are pretty much the prisoners of war in the Manosphere. I mean, that's the only way I can, describe it. I'm married myself, but there are men that have it a hell of a lot worse than me. There are men that, they can't even leave their house without a permission slip. It's pretty bad. Or they have women that berate them or, shamed in the guilt, or the women have managed to just so much manginize them, I made that word up, that they can't even see straight. So, especially those men, I try to slip, red pills when I can. As a lot of you know, though, it tends to be tougher with those type of men, particularly because they've been institutionalized. And I have a video of that if you look at my past videos where I talk about that. And they're so used to being subservient. They're so used to being in the matrix. They're so used to being a mangina. They're so used to being a white knight. They're so used to the comfort of a nice, soft, warm, golden vagina that it's really hard for them to dig out of that blue pill hole, if you will. That comfort. And in all fairness, I mean, that's something that I struggled with, even before I took the red pill, but on the verge of it, going from a place where, you're wondering, oh, when's the next time I'm going to get some, or do I have to ask again, to a point where you just say, you know what, if she wants to, great. If she doesn't, I'll either fap or, I'll settle myself one way or the other. But that's the big fear of a lot of married men I've talked to. They don't want to be alone. They don't want to die alone. They don't understand or don't even want to think about life outside of what they have, because the woman in the bed or in the house is what they have. That's the sure thing. And in their minds, if I get something, every other month or every third month, I'm grateful, because I don't want to have to go back out there, as a divorcee, I'm too old to start, dating and all that stuff. What's Tinder? And meanwhile, I'm paying child support, I'm paying alimony. So it's really tough for these men. So what I try to do for those men is that I don't frame it in terms of black and white, divorce or not divorce. Because I could tell you, having gone through a quasi-divorce with my previous relationship. I wasn't married, but basically we had significant assets together that required a lawyer and divvying up things and, legal agreements to make sure everybody was squared away before we separated. And that was as easy as it gets. Most divorces are a far cry from that. They usually involve lawyers on each side taking everybody to the cleaners. So a lot of these men, they have peers that have gone through that, or maybe parents, and they want to avoid it at all costs. So I try to put it in a simple context as I can, and just starting with the basic stuff, like what can you do at the most basic level to kind of get your balls back, or at least, being able to touch them, say, okay, there they are. What little pieces of red pill. Simple stuff I always start with is going out with your friends. How often do you go out with your friends? A lot of these men, you'll be surprised, haven't seen their friends in like 6 months or a year. Sounds shocking, but I know men like these. It's not like they go out every week or every month. It's like it's a rare occasion. It's like, Christmas or something, once a year and that's it. Whereas their wives go out every weekend or every other weekend. And so just getting these men to say, you know what, take that small step, plan a movie or bowling or whatever with, your best friends. The downside of that is that even if they are receptive to that, their women have been so good in ostracizing them from their friends to making sure that they truly worship the gynocracy, that by the time they stick their head up, their friends have gone their own way, if you will. So they're in a bit of a bind. But at least, I try to get them thinking, keep it basic. Don't be a hero at first. Don't try to do the Hangover 3 or something. You start basic, start small. Like, what little victories can you get? And then you build on that, and you build on that, and you slowly build your confidence. Another thing is, diet, okay? If you're overweight, how often do you work out? I don't have time. Well, maybe you walk for a bit instead of driving. So basic stuff. So anyway, back to the travels. I got to spread MGTOW to middle-aged folks and married folks, some younger MGTOWs that I know, who I turned on to, trying to continue to kind of give them red pills. And they have it the toughest in some ways in that they don't have, especially if they don't have the experience of having their ass handed to them, right? Because it's hard if you haven't experienced, a separation that has literally cost you financially or psychologically or emotionally, whereas, you are paying money for a house you no longer live in. You're seeing your kids every other week if you're lucky. It's hard to tell them, hey, don't get married. It seems anecdotal, And part of that is that there's still that need, there's still that, especially if you're younger, man. I mean, that biological need for physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, wanting to reproduce and spread your seed. It's so compelling. And if you happen to be a young man that's upwardly mobile and even smells of resources, you're going to have panties being thrown at you. And so, it's tough. But, I just kind of keep at it and, try to encourage him. And I tell him, look, it's not easy. I said, even for me, I ran into some of my, exes while I was out there, and even some, women that, had their eye on me, and kind of keep focused and, not be distracted as much as possible. Because, as a lot of you MGTOW and content producers have pointed out, there's still that biological drive that we have, that need. I mean, sure, we are higher functioning, larger brained creatures, but you know what? A lot of those drives are in the lower part of the limbic system. They're in the lizard brain, if you will. And so they can come out if our guard is down. That's why you have a lot of these incidents that happen when folks are drinking or really just under the influence of whether it's, drugs or alcohol, whatever the case may be, because they're there and they really got to be kept in check, or they can cause a lot of trouble. So, it's great to be back. Shout outs to a few content producers that I got to be wildly entertained and informed while I was gone. That includes my man Phil G the Nobody, dropping tracks, Invention 1 MGTOW, Trifling a Monkey, Sandman, Mayor of MGTOwn, new content producer who's also married like myself, Red Pill Germany, of course a straight shooter, and there's so many of you out there. But keep doing what you do. Keep producing. I know there's a lot of drama in the Manosphere. Please don't let that distract you, because, you're helping a lot of men out there, particularly, married men like me. It's just great to see you guys putting out your content. And even if it's not about MGTOW, even if it's just what you're into, again, like Phil G the Nobody, he doesn't talk a heck of a lot about MGTOW stuff, but I just love his beats. I love his tracks. It really takes me back to like early 90s hip hops. And so a lot of times I will just, pull up his beats and just have it in the car and be bumping. And, things like Vention talks about, he goes, obviously, he talks about silver, he talks about, his gardening, we all know about his tomatoes and things like that. So, I just continue to encourage you, content producers. It doesn't have to even always be about MGTOW stuff. It can be about whatever you're into, because, trust me, there's somebody out there, there's some guy out there who may not even be looking for Red Pill content. They may just be looking about, how do I make my plums better? And, he stumbles upon Vention 1 stuff. And so, again, I know I read about there was a lot of drama with the alt-right and, things of that fashion. So, again, don't get discouraged, guys. Just keep putting it out there. Haters going to always hate. There's always going to be detractors. But at the end of the day,